At LinkedIn, we know hiring is a big deal for your small business. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. LinkedIn uses data that you can't find anywhere else to give you the best candidates, all so you can feel confident you're hiring the best person for the job. And even a little hiring bliss. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast, covering the games all the time rather than once every 4 years. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and we always say it, another Olympic Games just around the corner. It is 1 year to go to Milano Cortina.
Michael hears from the head of Team GB about medal potential, not medal targets.
Yeah, that is very important, and you'll hear it in the interview. We do discuss the word potential, and we also discuss the word targets. Coming up, as well as another Olympic Games, a brand new Olympics president will be voted on very soon. John has been hearing from all 7 candidates. I mean, someone drew the short straw. Not the magnificent 7. We'll find out.
Yeah, you'll have to wait and see what I thought of the 7 candidates.
Michael Weddock's Winter Wonders.
And of course, Michael's special news from the games. We promised you in the last episode. We will round it all up later. And if you want to get in touch and see what we're about anytime, Anything But Footy on social media, lots of Milan pictures this week. And the recently updated website as well is worth looking back on Paris 2024, anythingbutfooty.com. So here we are again, 1 year to go to another Olympic Games. Now, I was in Paris in 2023, so I assume this year, Michael, you're in Milan ahead of the Winter Games of 2026.
I wish. No, I'm not in Milan, unfortunately, but I have had the opportunity to speak to Team GB's boss as they head towards those Winter Games.
I'm Eve Muirhead, and I am the chef de mission for the Milan Winter Olympic Games.
We are 1 year to go, Eve. How excited are you to be leading this team?
Do you know what? I am so excited. I can't actually believe it. It's 1 year to go already. I just want to kind of fulfill the kind of potential of this team, because I know what a great team we're going to have when it comes to the Milan Cortina Games. It's a huge opportunity to get out there. It's a games that's more or less on our doorstep. For us in Great Britain, the time change is going to be only 1 hour, very different to what the previous games have been like, and not far for fans to travel. So it's going to be great.
How different is it a year to go being the chef de mission to when you were an athlete?
It's a different kind of pressure, if you know what I mean. Like as an athlete, you've got a year to go. You wouldn't have been selected yet. So you're still working very hard to get the results, to get selection. But right now, I guess my pressure is preparing the kind of delegation and the athletes, the support staff to be the best prepared we can. To be the support for these athletes when it comes to the games. So it's very different being on the other side. But I think, like, I know what all the kind of national governing bodies are going through just now, in terms of prepping their delegation. They're traveling all the way around the world, competing, getting those qualification points. And winter sports comes down to the smallest margins, doesn't it? So yeah, it's really interesting for me, but also something that I've really kind of taken to, and I've enjoyed every minute of it so far.
And as someone that's recently retired from your competitive career, how athlete focused can you be, have you been in this new role?
Yeah, like I as you know, very competitive as an athlete, and I guess I still am. Like, I don't think you're ever going to lose that competitive part of you. Like, I still like to set myself challenges and goals to make, but it's just different when it's not on a sheet of ice, isn't it? Still do a lot of kind of physical challenges and set my goals, but again, like within this job, I always set kind of targets and kind of different parts of it that I want to achieve, deadlines, but that's part of the job. So it's something that I've really kind of learned to adapt to, but also something that I'm slightly used to as well.
You talk about your competitiveness. That's in half marathons on the golf course, on the ice, isn't it?
I don't think I'm ever going to lose that, am I? It's just whatever, yeah, having done it for 15, 20 years, it's something that kind of sticks with you. Sometimes I wish I wasn't as competitive though, but yeah, I'm not sure that'll come any day.
Two words you've used in this discussion that I want to pick up on. You talked there about targets, but you used the word, I think, deliberately right at the start, potential. Is that the word of the day, if you like? Is that the word of the year that we have to go to the Winter Olympics? Potential?
We definitely have potential as a team. I know that, and I think as well we look at like how much this team is performing on the world stage just now. But again, as I mentioned, like we know how unpredictable winter sports is, and it comes down to absolutely nothing, doesn't it? Like you look at the snow sports, like they're competing for not very many seconds. Curling comes down to, I guess, less than an inch, and it is very much on a knife edge. But I think it's just part of it. We're a very very much a small nation, aren't we? We're very much a small winter sport team, and there's no hiding within winter sports.
You say a small nation, but results recently, I mean, you talked there about the snow, Zoe Atkin, Mia Brooks, Charlotte Banks. These results are coming in every weekend on the ice. We've just seen Lewis and Lila win a medal at the European Championships as well. I mean, for a chef de mission with 365 days to go, you must look forward to all of these results each weekend.
I do. Like we're going well, aren't we? And what a weekend, like what you just said there. Like what a weekend we had last weekend. Like Charlotte Banks coming away with two gold medals, Mia Brooks, the ice figure skaters, Layla and Lewis getting the bronze medal at the Europeans. Like God, it's yeah, like it's going really strong, isn't it? And I think as a fellow athlete, like I know what it's like just now, them going through this kind of qualification and the lead up to a Winter Olympic Games. And right now, we couldn't really ask for more of them. They really are performing out there. And yeah, every kind of weekend, you're following with intent all these results, and it's great to see them coming in.
You got this job with 630 days to prepare. The logistics of the Winter Games, Milan Cortina, a mountain range in the middle, some challenges there.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a widespread games, isn't it? Not that we haven't been used to that. It's a new games model. What the kind of principle that the organising committee are putting forward is adapting to the games and its territories. So we're taking the sport to their people. And as one team GB, of course, it's going to be a challenge to get that team unity together, but it's something that we're working very hard on because it's something that we do very, very well is kind of stick to our values and get that one team GB ethos within the team. But I think it's also a massive positive for the athletes. We just spoke about how great they're doing at World Champs, World Cups. And a lot of these athletes know the different kind of slopes, arenas like the back of their hands because they do compete there throughout the year. So I do think it's a massive positive having the kind of widespread games because we can treat it as a kind of mini World Cup, mini World Champs.
And I saw you in Paris, obviously looking and learning and observing at the Summer Games. And that was very much a games that took the sports to the people. And it was good and exciting and successful for that reason, wasn't it? And I think Milano Cortina could be very similar.
I completely agree, and I think we'll see the same come the next Winter Olympics again in the French Alps. And I think I'm very, very passionate about getting people involved in sport under any capacity, and this is exactly what they're doing. They're bringing the sport to the people. And I think Milan Cortina has that kind of winter alpine feel doesn't it? In the kind of little, but you go there and you've kind of got that feel around you with the kind of winter chalets and the ski slopes and the chairlifts, and that's great to see. So, yeah, I think we've definitely got a games that's going to be a good one, and it's something that I'm very passionate about is making sure we do as much as we can for the athletes and the staff to perform.
Yeah, it'll look and feel very different from Beijing, for example. Final question then. We've got a year to go. We know that everyone will get excited once the opening ceremony kicks off, once we see you guys on the snow and the ice. We know that everyone will go crazy for curling. They always do every 4 years. But why should we be excited right here, right now with a year to go? Why should we be following the stories of your athletes?
Well, I think we look at how the athletes are getting on just now, and we're doing very, very well. We're very much a small winter nation, but we definitely do kind of grasp the nation when it comes to winter sports, don't we? A lot of these athletes have kind of come from kind of dry ski slopes, if you look at it like that. A lot of likes of curling rinks, skating rinks, like they've got to share the ice. So we aren't a nation that produces tens of 20s of 30s of different kind of people within each sport. Like we're very limited within that. So we've got a small team. I think it's going to be kind of mid 50s going out there. And for every one of these athletes, like I think if they can perform to their potential, it's going to be very highly competitive. Yeah, really looking forward to being part of that team, I'll admit, on the other side, and being part of their journey.
You enjoying being chef?
I am. I'm really loving it. I've got a fantastic team behind me, great organisation to work with, and it's getting exciting for sure.
Well, we're excited to see what Team GB will do there with 1 year to go. Eve, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So really interesting to get 10 minutes of Eve Muirhead's time 1 year to go from the games. And yes, she did use the word targets. And then obviously she did talk a lot about potential. And we mentioned it, didn't we, in the previous edition of the podcast that we recorded. I think that is the word, and I said it there to Eve, didn't I? That is the word of the moment, potential. Because as Eve said, in winter sports, we're seeing these terrific results at the moment, and more of that with Wadop's Winter Wonders coming soon. But the margins in winter sports, it's so hard to predict. I think some of the summer sports, there are less opportunities, if you like, for things to go wrong in some of the summer sports. So form is a much bigger indicator. But as we've seen over the years in winter sport, conditions and everything else can really sort of play into the hands of some competitors and, can really upset the hopes of others. So, yeah, I think there's so many reasons to be optimistic at the moment in both snow and ice sports from a Team GB point of view. And, and if all those potentials convert into medal hopes, and it's not all about medals, sometimes it might be about reaching finals or, personal best or whatever. But if we hear they're a team of around about 50, 55, if we see some of the medal returns, I think as a percentage of size of team to the actual medals won, potentially, and I use that word again, potentially, it could be a really successful games in terms of that conversion rate.
So if you win 5 medals, you won 10%.
Yeah. I mean,
of athletes have come away with a medal. And as you rightly say, with the Winter Olympics, with the ice and the snow, one little slip and you're out of it. And that's how difficult it is. And I thought it was interesting. Eve obviously had an amazing Beijing where she became the Olympic champion that she'd always wanted to be, but was only one of 2 medals. And actually Team GB didn't have a great last Winter Olympics, did they? But actually there is a bit more hope for this one.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed it before, the reasons why Beijing 2022 didn't work out. Again, I think we went there with a lot of hope about medals, certainly in terms of some of the snow sports. I think, and we've spoken, haven't we, to snow sports, Vicky Gosling, the chief executive, about this. But there were obviously a lot of difficulties for British competitors because they have to go and find the snow. To go and train, and obviously the build up to Beijing with COVID and the travel restrictions and everything else, that was a lot harder. if you're a swimmer, if you're a triathlete, if you're an athlete at the Summer Games, there weren't those challenges because you could still do some training at home, or you could find, local facilities where you could train. And obviously we know, if we cast our mind back now to 5 years to when the pandemic started, we know that the elite athletes were, if you like, released from their captivity a little bit earlier than some other people. They did get that opportunity, but they were able to do that training at home. If you're an elite athlete that has to go and chase the snow, but you couldn't because of the travel restrictions and everything else that were in place, I think it was a lot harder. And that's why I think a lot of the preparations for Beijing were interrupted. This time, no excuses, quite frankly.
And as she said as well, it's going to be a bit more like Paris. That there's going to be more freedom. We remember in Beijing the fact you had to spit into things every day. And it was incredible the amount of lockdown that was going on within that Olympic Games, because obviously it was China, etc. But Eve saying there that it is going to be more about the spirit of the games and being out and about. We're going to see the countdown clock being unveiled in Milan with a year to go. We know that Milan is staging 3 or 4 of the sports, and then Cortina with the sliders across the mountains and real snow. It's just going to be a bit more of a Olympic Games. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, and Eve talked about it there, and that's what sort of got my excitement flowing. She said it will feel like a Winter Games, one like Paris. As she said, they'll be taking the sports to the spectators, to the people, which, was hugely successful in Paris, as we know. And it will feel like a Winter Games because, as you'll recall, when they went to those aerial shots of the snow events in Beijing in 2022, what you saw was the snow on the course, and then the rest of it was just a woods or bit of parkland or whatever it was, because it was all artificial. What did Eve say there? She said, you're going to see chairlifts, you're going to see chalets in the mountains. This will feel like a Winter Games. That's why everyone's got such fond memories of Lillehammer in 1994, because it looked like if you sat a school party down and said, draw the winter, draw a winter mountain range. That's what the Olympic Games look like. And it snowed and everything else. And I think we've got that opportunity now with Milano Cortina, certainly, obviously, when we get into Cortina and up in the mountains. And we will again with the next Games in the French Alps as well.
Well, Wadoc's Winter Wonders is coming up shortly. But before we wrap up talking about Milano, your daughter had a quick chat with Eve yesterday as well, didn't she?
Yes, because famously I commentated from my home studio on Eve and her team.
So you didn't have to spit every day.
So I didn't have to go and spit every day, because I covered the Beijing Games for TalkSport from the home studio. And obviously with the time differences, a lot of the main action was happening in the middle of the night. So I would be up in the middle of the night and reporting and describing what was happening over in Beijing. And the night that Eve won the gold medal with her team, she skipped the team to winning the curling gold medal. My youngest daughter woke up in the night and came looking for me, wandering into the home studio at about the exact moment that Eve Muirhead was about to win the gold medal, which I was describing live on the radio with Martin Kellner at the time. So, yeah, I think if you listen back to it very faintly in the background, you can hear me trying to shush a small child as Eve Muirhead achieved her stone of destiny, if you like. And yeah, so we had that chat, Eve and I. My youngest daughter was there just to renew acquaintances.
She's always there.
She's always there, which was very nice. And then afterwards she said to me, I think I've spoken to more Olympic champions than the average 12-year-old, Dad.
I think that is probably fair. This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. It's a year to go to Milano Cortina 2026. But who will be the next Olympics president?
If your football team had one option in their playbook, the results probably wouldn't be great. The same could be said for your investments. SIBO index options like SPX and XSP can help expand your investing strategies with cash settlement and potential tax advantages. If you're ready for a more dynamic game plan, head to betterwithoptions.com. SIBO, life is better with options. Your investments could be too. There are risks associated with SIBO company products. Review the disclosures and disclaimers at SIBO.com/US_disclaimers.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic sport podcast. We are looking ahead to Milano Cortina. The Olympic Games is 1 year away. And then obviously after that, the Winter Paralympic Games will follow as well. But we'll just pause for a moment and pay our respects to the friends and the families of those that tragically lost their lives in the recent Washington, D.C. plane crash. Members of the US figure skating team, coaches and family members were heading back from the national championships. Now, all deaths are horrific, of course, and we stand with the wider Olympic family and send our best thoughts and prayers to all involved.
It's very important what we're doing here today in Lausanne, but in front of the loss of life. Athletes or non-athletes, Olympic family or not Olympic family, because all this puts everything that we do in perspective.
It would be remiss of me if I didn't just reflect on the awful events last night in the United States. I know the grievous loss of life.
Our hearts and prayers go out to them at this very tragic time.
So a slight gear change on the podcast, but those were 3 of the 7 candidates for the next Olympic presidency, paying their respects, as Michael said, to the dead in Washington. Now, as a journalist and someone who's watched a lot of media conferences, I thought it was quite telling who started their 10-minute allotted slot with the media by saying a few words. That Washington, D.C. crash had happened literally hours before. The 7 candidates were all presenting to the IOC and then coming and speaking to the world's media in 10-minute slot. And I thought it was really interesting who decided to pay their respects as part of the Olympic family and who didn't. And you've just heard the 3 of them that did. So on to the detail of what each candidate said and wants to do if elected by the IOC in Greece. All the members will be voting on March 20th. Put that note in your diary. March 20th, we're going to find out who replaces Thomas Bach as head of the organisation of the Olympics. It was a really interesting hour and a half. I know Michael said I got the short straw, but actually hearing them speak from the 7 candidates about what they want for the Olympic presidency, of course, they're all promising the same thing. They're all promising change. They're all promising athletes first. But I think what they revealed also was that some of the processes they didn't necessarily agree with. They weren't allowed to take questions from IOC members or get any type of feedback. Apparently, they all had a big dinner the night before in Lausanne, and they all had to sit on a separate table, the 7 candidates together, because they weren't allowed to mix with other IOC members, which seems incredibly bizarre. So effectively, when that vote happens in March, they're going in blind. And we're going in blind. No one really knows who is going to win this, but they did all speak to the media. They took 10 minutes of questions, and they all slightly criticised that process. And of course, moving forward, they will be in charge of that process. So let's run through some of the main protagonists. And for me, the leading figures are the ones you actually just heard from. I thought they came across warm, measured, vision, and also positivity and positively as well. We know a lot about Lord Seb COE in this podcast and obviously the country. So I'm going to start with Juan Antonio SAMARANCH, who's the son of the former Olympic president, which he denied was going to be an issue.
I mean, my father left office 25 years ago. His legacy to me personally as his son, I appreciate that very much. And really his example is always with me, but the recipes of today have nothing to do with a presidency that ended up 24 years ago. Bear in mind, he joined the Olympic movement more than 60 years ago.
He also denied that his plan to have more openness and votes on future host cities was something he could have pushed for in the past few years, where he sat with Thomas Bach on the executive board. So he's been voting or not voting. He's been saying, yeah, Brisbane, you can have it. The French Alps, you can have the next Winter Games. What he's saying, we need to go back to having votes and more openness on hosts to make sure that people really can deliver. Remember that Brisbane, as I say, was given that 2032 Olympic Summer Games with no real bidding process. Look, he was incredibly smooth. He also finished his section praising the media in the room. I mean, talk about appealing to a room full of journalists. You just praise them. His quote was, "Let's refocus relationships with the media. They are not enemies, they are allies." And he said, "You can keep me accountable on that if I am here." In other words, if he's in charge, he wants to be more open and speak more to the media than probably Thomas Bach has done.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, a lot is made of, Juan Antonio Samaranch Sr., who obviously was in the role before. And I can spin that both ways. I could say to you that's a positive, that, he's there. And it could also be a negative because, of course, we remember the controversies of that era around the buying of the games for Salt Lake City, 2002, for example. But also, I think we need to remember that the games that we see now that you and I love and adore is very much Juan Antonio Samaranch's senior version of the games. I mean, the way that the games has evolved, has grown, has become the massive thing that it has. It's not that long ago that the Olympic Games, was in serious doubt. And we always hark back to LA 84. That was the games that saved the games, if you like. It actually showed that it could work on a financial footing. But around that time, we were having boycotts. And actually, it was the original Samaranch era, from Seoul through to Barcelona in 92. And of course, on right through to magnificent games in Sydney in 2000. That was his era in terms of creating the commercial environment and the commercial, the top program, the key Olympic partner program that was all brought in at that time, which helps fund the games. So I think a lot of the IOC members will probably look on quite fondly to the connection. And as we know, with the IOC and the IOC members, they probably won't hark back to what happened towards the end of that reign with things like Salt Lake City, of course, which obviously was, a big black mark, a big blot on the whole movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Prince Feisal Al Hussein of Jordan also impressed me. He was the first one up, maybe. When the first one, you get the opportunity to kind of set the agenda. He said he wanted to inspire imagination, focus on integrity and inclusion. He also included a full review of the sporting calendar. He really wanted to look at whether everything is in the right place and whether they could be looking at moving it. He also wanted to develop ever closer ties with the IPC, who run the Paralympics, which again, no one else really kind of mentioned, which I thought was quite an interesting way of doing that. And he talked boxing in LA.
I would love to see boxing back on the program. It was one of the oldest and original Olympic sports. And I just hope that we can find a global federation that can take on that responsibility to providing boxing in LA. So I would love to see it there.
And of course, we know that World Boxing, the organisation hoping to get the nod from the IOC when one of those is a president, has now more than 70 members. There are still more needed. But boxing, everybody wants it. He said it there. I'd love it to be there. Everybody wants boxing in the LA Games, don't they?
Yeah, it would feel very odd, I think, to have an Olympic Games without boxing. It is one of those sports that just seems to sit perfectly in terms as well of the amateur nature of it. And I know, the boxers that go now aren't amateurs as such. The GB boxing setup, those boxers are there, they're on the program, they're getting paid. But the fact that it's very much a line in the sand between the boxers going for an Olympic Games and then what will happen next. So, for example, as we record in the last 24 hours, Delicious Ori has announced that he's leaving the GB boxing program. He's signed professional. So that's his amateur status, if you like, behind him. And I think there is something magical, if you like, about the fact that boxing at the Olympics hasn't capitulated. They haven't said, okay, let's bring all the big names, back into the games. Let's keep the integrity of the sport where it is with the athletes that we've got and the programs that we've got. And it would feel, as I said, very odd to have an Olympic Games without boxing, but it can't be in under any circumstance. It has to be in under the right circumstances. And that involves fairness and governance and transparency and all the things that World Boxing are saying that they are going to do, which the other body, if you like, haven't.
Yeah, the IBA. Boxing. Go on. There was more boxing coming up because one of the other candidates talked about boxing. But go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about Prince Faisal Al Hussein of Jordan, wants to inspire imagination, focus on integrity and inclusion. I mean, if he doesn't win the IOC presidency race, I think he's got a great opportunity in either Miss World or indeed the Eurovision Song Contest with slogans like that, because they are exactly the types of things that play well in those types of contests.
Well, talking of slogans, the other candidate, of course, I was impressed with was Seb COE, head of World Athletics, as we know. His presentation was based on delivering on a world stage, STAGE. So everything began with the first. So each letter began with something. So sport first for S. Tomorrow's generation for T, athletes at the heart, including financial reward as A, growth for G, and empowerment for E. Now, Seb is the first British candidate in 60 years to run the Olympics, only one of the 7 to ever run an organising committee, obviously running London 2012. So what was he talking about? On the challenges for the IOC and the movement, he wanted to focus on young people.
Engaging, exciting, and challenging tomorrow's generation is going to be critical, because it's that cohort that is ultimately going to be your future sponsors, your future thought leaderships, your future governments, your future politicians, and we need to create amongst that group of people a lifelong bond for sport. So even if they don't remain in sport as coaches, administrators, communicators, we at least have the opportunity for them to assume leadership roles wherever they are and really fundamentally understand the nature of sport. And it is only that way that we will raise sport to the top of government agendas.
Now, it did slightly remind me of Inspire a Generation from London 2012, which is a long time ago now, and I'm not sure how much we have inspired. But look, no idea is new, and we have to keep bringing the young people through, as he said. But he finished with an answer to a question, which I think is a good way of sort of saying why I think these 3 are the leading candidates. After winning the bid in 2005 for the Olympics for London, becoming president of World Athletics in 2015, he was asked, "Where are you in this campaign?" And he answered with, "I have absolutely no idea. And I hope I've communicated my love for the Olympic movement and the Games."
Do you believe him that he has absolutely no idea? Or do you think behind the scenes there is the lobbying and everything else that goes on with this?
Well, he told the story about Paul Dighton, who was his CEO of London 2012, sort of speaking to him after they won the bid in 2005, saying, "Well, why were you surprised that we didn't win it? Because everyone I spoke to said they were going to vote for London." So I think the issue is everybody tells you what you want to hear. So I mentioned earlier there hasn't been a great amount of mixing officially, but you're not telling me they're not having conversations. And he has a day job in World Athletics. He'll be talking to these people. I think it's between SAMARANCH and Seb, to be honest. They're the 2 that I really think it's between. Do you go with the historical side of it from, as you said earlier, about the Olympics and what his father brought, although that would be totally irrelevant, or do you have someone who's delivered a Games, performed at the Games, actually really wants to change it with the financial rewards, with giving gold medals, money for gold medals and silver medals and bronze medals? It would be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, Seb's CV, I think, puts him at the most qualified candidate, I would think. But as we know, it's not always the most qualified candidate when the IOC get together to vote. It's not always the best city and the best bid get the Games, is it? It's the most political, non-political organisation on the planet.
So in the spirit of openness, let's hear from the other 4.
I believe that I have a proven track record and experience to deliver. I have successfully run large multinational corporations, led important commercial and political negotiations across business, sport, media and entertainment, foreign affairs, technology, a lot of areas.
That particular topic was quite difficult to ensure or to look back and say we could have prevented that, mainly because these boxers had fought against each other previously. And there had been in many occasions where there had been no issues. As a female athlete, you want to be able to walk onto a level playing field, always. It's our job as the IOC to ensure that we are going to create that environment.
But very happy to be in front of you today after this presentation from the 7 candidates. And I hope that I convince my colleague that I can be a real a leader for the IOC. So up to you.
Presence of sports in each country in the world is not so high, not enough high. That why, if in the 5 continents, we together working and promote for the Olympism, I think that is a sports. Presence of the sport is grown. And have 24 hours because time zone is different. That's why for the broadcaster can give the 24 hours for the program.
So they are the 4 other candidates: David LAPPARTIENT, Johan ELIASCH, Kirsty COVENTRY, and Morinari WATANABE. Now, I thought David, I should say, because he's French, LAPPARTIENT. You heard him there. I hope I convinced my colleagues I can be a leader. I felt he's an outlier. He looked a little bit out of his depth to me. I was more thinking, wouldn't it have been great to have Tony Astanganier, who led the Paris bid and delivered on that? Wouldn't it have been better to have him as a potential candidate
in the future?
In the future, probably. But I just thought, look, I know LAPPARTIENT runs the UCI, he runs the World Cycling Body, so he's got the experience. But I just felt he looked out of his depth to me. He looked like the media was a little caught in the headlights, and I wasn't convinced about his stance on Russia, which he effectively said, we don't need to make a decision now whether the Russian athletes will be in the Winter Games. That's too premature. It's like, no, the decision's been made. Just do what we did in Paris. Nothing's changed until they pull out of the Ukraine. They shouldn't be in the games. ELIASCH, he would be the first ever winter sports president. He's Swedish. He now lives in the UK, so he would be a kind of British.
Be claiming him.
Candidate, yeah, exactly. He's the head of the World Ski Federation.
He's British until he loses, in which case he'll be Swedish.
He's bad. Yeah, that's fine. It's a bit like Andy Murray being Scottish. And he talked a lot about his business acumen, efficiency, strategy. It was a little dull. It was a little uninspiring, I'm afraid, to the point of boring. I was a little bit bored. I'm not sure the questions lasted 10 minutes either, to be honest. Kirsty COVENTRY. Now, look, she should be a front runner. No woman has ever led the Olympic movement, and no African host either, of course, has taken part in any games. No hosts, no candidates. So she's a double gold medalist, swimmer from Zimbabwe. She's been involved in the IOC for a number of years, and she's seen by many as the candidate that Thomas Bach supports. They kind of think that she is his kind of tip. Now, she denied that. She said he's been fair to all. He sat on the table, apparently, with the 7 at the IOC dinner before, and made sure that he hasn't been saying that it's one candidate. But as you heard there, she really be fighting for women's sport. And I felt after the controversy of the women's boxing in Paris that she really missed a trick. And she came over a little bit lost in those questions. Ultimately, she told a great story how she was a 9-year-old growing up and wanted to learn to love the Olympics. And she finished with how a 9-year-old now doesn't even watch TV. So how are we going to engage them? And it's a really important issue. But I just felt she got lost on the whole boxing side of things. And finally, look, Morinari WATANABE, he's in charge of world gymnastics. I mean, frankly, look out for gymnastics if his ideas come true, because gymnastics could be totally changed if he pushes through some of his radical proposals. He wants a 24-hour Olympics over 5 continents to hope save money for the hosts and have broadcasting 24 hours a day with sport 24 hours a day. Now, look, it may be what the Commonwealth Games are looking at moving forward, but I don't think that the Olympics is probably going to make that happen. He also talked about reforming the World Sport Organization, so being the main sport organization for the world and rebranding it. I'm not sure that you want to change the word the Olympics. It pretty much does what it says on the tin. It's the greatest brand, one of the greatest brands in the world. So look, they're the votes. They're the candidates. The votes take place on March 20th in Greece at the 144th IOC gathering. We'll have to wait and see who they go for.
Yeah, it'll be just really interesting. It's so difficult to predict. It's such a close race. We've said it before, that the people we've spoken to that have more experience of covering these things than we do, they've said Kirsty COVENTRY is a big contender, but whether things have changed now after these presentations from what you were saying as the person that sat through them, you think they might have. You've obviously put your first three forward. I think from a British point of view, having Seb COE there would be fantastic. As I said, I think his CV, his track record makes him the standout candidate, but who knows what the IOC members are thinking about.
Absolutely.
Now, let's move on to some other news from the Games. We'll start with diving, and Jane Figueiredo, the well-renowned coach, has announced this week that she's left Aquatics GB after just over a decade. She coached, amongst others, Tom Daley, and a very successful spell with Aquatics GB. And we wish her well with whatever is next for Jane Figueiredo. In cycling, double Olympic GB mountain bike champion Tom Pidcock showed his pedigree back on the roads with a first win for his new team. The Paris and Tokyo gold medalist on the mountain bike left Ineos at the end of last year. He won his first hilly stage, or he won the first hilly stage of the Saudi Tour, and was then also the winner of the overall classification as well. So congratulations to Tom Pidcock. In athletics, and we've got the indoor athletics season coming up, the English Championships in Sheffield, the age group championships this weekend. We've got the Keeley Classic. Keely Hodgkinson will be going for a world record in Birmingham over 800 metres, a record that was actually set on the day that she was born.
Wow.
Which makes us feel old. Because
yes,
that was actually in the early 21st century. And then we've got 2 days in Birmingham of the British Indoor Championships as well. So looking forward to covering those events. Meanwhile, Asics has announced the signing of Louis Hinchliffe. Now, you'll remember him from the British Outdoor Trials and from Paris 2024, won a medal as part of the relay team there for Team GB. Very much one of the rising stars of British sport, British athletics and British sprinting. 21 years of age. He's from Sheffield originally, coached now by Richard Kilty. He was coached by Carl Lewis. He is currently studying at the University of Houston.
Michael Weddock's Winter Wonders.
So Waddock's Winter Wonders. Michael, round up the winter headlines for us from a Team GB point of view.
Let's start on the ice, shall we? We've just seen the European Figure Skating Championships and a bronze medal for Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson. So we have been desperate, haven't we, for, 40 years, let's say, for someone to try and take the crown of Torvill Dean. They did come back, of course, in 1994 in Lillehammer, so maybe 30 years. I'll revise that, if you like. But yeah, another bronze medal at a European level for Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson. So definitely contenders on the world stage, but still a little bit of work to do, I think, if we're to see them on the Olympic podium in a year's time. Staying on the ice, bobsleigh, Brad Hall's team, another podium finish for them in St. Moritz and also one in Innsbruck as well. Matt Weston continues to lead the skeleton standings as well. And onto the snow, the freestyle skier Zoe Atkin won a half-pipe gold medal in Aspen. Third podium in a row in snowboard slope style, including some X Games medal as well for Mia Brooks. A lot of people talking about Mia Brooks and what a star that she could be by this time next year. And Charlotte Banks, for me, I mean, we predicted ahead of Beijing that we thought good things would come from Charlotte Banks. Didn't work out for various reasons in Beijing, but 2 wins, 2 gold medals in 2 days for Charlotte Banks in the snowboard cross.
Some names to keep an eye on. That's why they are called Michael Weddock's Winter wonders.
Michael Weddock's Winter Wonders.
And we're finishing where we started with the Winter Olympics. The IOC has elected Dolomiti Valentini in the Italian Alps as the host of the Winter Youth Olympic Games in 2028, using some of the legacy from the 2026 Games in Cortina. Let's hope that actually goes ahead as planned. Still a few question marks on that. It's a year to go till Milano Cortina. Michael is not in Milan, but we've been looking forward to it yet. But keep an eye out. We're going to have the countdown clock and various other things. The rings, I'm sure, will be appearing soon as well. Check out our socials, Anything But Footy, on all the usual places. You can check out our latest blogs on the website. I might do one on the candidates before March the 20th and talk a bit more about what I thought they were from an Olympic presidency point of view. So check that out, anythingbutfooty.com. There is
that. You might do one. You're not like I do, back myself into a corner and say, I will do. Yeah, see how I feel.
It depends what else is going on. I will be listening to the Spotify Olympics music playlist, though, with a year to go with Milano Cortina, and stay with us. This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. We're moving to Milano and looking ahead to LA.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. Obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors, but they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. The platform connects you with trusted experts to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. So whether you're closing your first deal or gearing up for growth, Vanta makes compliance easy. Join over 8,000 companies, including Y Combinator and Techstar startups who trust Vanta. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/simplify. That's VANTA.com/simplify for $1,000 off.